So it was a big risk for me because I knew from that experience of juggling the bootcamp application and full-time work that I couldn't do both. Like I had to say no to something. So I was like, okay, I'm going to, take the risk and do these 3 months, not know if I'm going to get hired at the end. But I remember telling Kevin on a day when I was feeling particularly confident, I was like, you know what, there's no guarantee I'll get hired, but I'm the guarantee. Like, I know I work hard. Like, that's the guarantee.
Hello, everybody, hello. Welcome to... Where am I? What is this? Oh, God, what happened? I've been mysteriously transported to Nashville to talk with Tania Yeo, to talk with Daniel Throssell, and to talk with Stephen Young. And we are going to talk about a variety of different topics. And ultimately, we are going to try to dispel a lot of myths, give a lot of information, give a lot of insights about copywriting that you can use to further your career or even potentially can we make money with this copywriting thing? Is it possible?
I don't want to make any promises that are going to get me in trouble, you know.
Yeah, the FTC is listening to this. Legal is definitely listening to this, so be very careful, Tania. So speaking of legal, I wanted to start this first conversation with you guys because I feel very privileged to talk to you all, and I feel very privileged that you all took the time to talk to me. But one commonality that we all have is that we have some glancing or deep interaction with the financial newsletter and copywriting space. And one of the things that a lot of people generally do or generally want to learn more about is, what is the most profitable niche? What is the best paying niche? Things like that. When in reality, I keep trying to tell people that there is no best niche. There's only a best niche for you. You can make money doing practically anything with copywriting. But we all have different experiences with that. And I was wondering if you guys wouldn't mind sharing your different experiences getting into, and in one case, out of financial copywriting.
Who do you want to start?
Well, ladies first, so I'll start. I began financial copywriting in 2015, and Michael Masterson was one of my mentors, and I've been doing it for about 8 years. Right now, I'm the managing director of a financial publishing business. So I'm involved in long-form direct response copywriting. I'm involved in editorial. I'm involved in analysis. I'm sort of soup to nuts, taking care of everything front to back. But you guys have had a much different experience.
Now, I got my start in financial copywriting when an Australian financial guru called Scott Pape, who's very well known, wasn't at the time, actually. He first contacted me to help him launch his book, which went on to become the best-selling Australian book of all time, The Barefoot Investor. So he brought me on to help launch that book, and so I worked with him for the next several years, helping him with a few more books, editing and launching those, and also managing his financial newsletter, The Barefoot Blueprint, which was, one of the most trusted financial publishing services in Australia. And certainly because of the penetration we had with the book, it was almost a household thing, that brand. So we had a lot of experience. So I personally was involved a lot with the day-to-day operations of that newsletter, coming up with content and editorial, even customer service and retention, stuff like that. So I worked with him for, since 2016. And it's only really this year that I'm still regularly in touch with him, but we've just started to slow down. So he did shut down the newsletter in 2020. And that's kind of the out that you're talking about, that at that point when I would have had the opportunity, I think, to go and jump ship and move to a Motley Fool or an Agora imprint in Australia if I wanted, because with the experience that I had, I probably could have got any of those jobs, but it wasn't really something I wanted to do. I kind of wanted to do my own thing instead.
And we all know persuasivepage.com, the own thing that you have sort of started.
All right. I was a high school teacher for 6 years, and that, to me, that's an important part of the journey, because a lot of people just ask me, wait, you started this like a year and a half ago, and then they just erase the 6 years that I think actually gave me a leg up in copywriting. But those 6 years were part of a contract that I couldn't get out of. Like, I would have to pay the government like $500,000 if if I want to get out of it. So I knew that once I was done with those 6 years, I didn't want to do anything like that again. I didn't want to be beholden to anyone, and not know what to do with my life. So when I was done, I moved to Tbilisi, Georgia, which is not in America, which has been the cause of a lot of like confusion with my clients. And I thought I was going to teach online, and then the whole thing happened with the online teaching market. It wasn't possible anymore. And then I heard of copywriting. And I was like, I guess people say it's lucrative. I don't know why. I don't know why there's the word copy in front of it. What makes it different from regular writing? Which is how I fell into your Discord community. And
it's not I can't take credit for it.
The Discord community, where I met a lot of generous people. They were very kind and generous with their resources and their advice. Actually barely interacted with you on there. I just like read everything you posted and saved it to my phone. And I was like, okay. And then I watched my first financial promo, and I was like, yeah, I want to do this because I came from an art background. I went to art school. So just looking at how promos were visually designed excited me. And then there's the dramatic storytelling. I taught literature, so I just watched it and I was like, this is a piece of art. I want to learn how to make it. I got really excited about it. But before Sean started recording, he mentioned that a lot of people ask, like, how do you break into this? Like, it wasn't like instant for me. I was still working on the side. I still had a few tutoring clients to offset all the time I spent, writing copy for free, studying copy for free. So it wasn't like I catapulted into the industry. I was very glad when I was finally done with all those tutoring things and could finally focus on financial copywriting. And then at one point, every day I was practicing the 3 things that came from Joe Schrieffer: read 1 piece of copy a day, write 1 piece of copy a day, and come up with an idea a day. And I did that to a point where I was like, I don't know how to progress any further beyond this. So I was looking around for like mentors or courses. And then I stumbled on Kevin Rogers' community, and they were starting like a World of Financial Copywriting thing. So that when I submitted my sample to Joshua Lee Henry, who runs that club in Copy Chief, he was like, yeah, you need to get hired immediately. I'm going to talk you up to like people in Banyan Hill. I was obsessed with Banyan Hill. Like I had an entire folder on them. I was like, I'm going to know everything I need to say in a job interview. And then one day I finally got my in. I got to write like some lifts for one of the franchises.
For everybody listening, what is a lift?
It's a delicious little piece of copy. It's an email where you just tease what's on the other side of the click. You don't like tell them, but you make them so excited and like irresistibly curious that they have to click.
I want to ask you both, from when you learned what copywriting is to actually doing financial copywriting, how long did it take and how hard was that road?
Well, for me, I first learned what copywriting was kind of when I was following Ramit Sethi in 2015. And he had this contest to write a sales page advertising his new copywriting course. I didn't know what copywriting was at the time. All I knew is I'd seen what Ramit did with his emails, and I liked it.
What were you doing before?
So I was an engineer, electrical engineer, working for Chevron. So I had nothing to do with online business. I did not like my job, though. So I really very much liked the idea of what Ramit was teaching, the kind of online business. So that was around 2015, the end of 2015, that I I entered his contest and I happened to win against a bunch of other copywriters with my first ever sales letter. And that was the start of a very sharp learning curve, which lasted for a few months before I got on UpWork. Stephen actually mentored me through that for the first year on UpWork. And it was about a year after that, I think, that Scott approached me. So I had probably a year to get good from going, what is copywriting? How's it different to copy and paste, like you were saying? What does copy mean? It was about a year until I got approached to go into financial. And that was not an easy year. Like, it's not like I was doing it part-time. I ended up quitting my job in the first few months. I think I worked very, very hard. Like, I was doing this in my lunch breaks and after work on my shifts. When I'd come home from my fly-in, fly-out, I was flying in and flying out to this engineering job. I come home, I'd be working on copywriting all the time. So it was intense. Mm-hmm. Then obviously I quit my job and I was working on that the whole year. So that was my whole thing for a whole year before I got into anywhere near financial. So it definitely wasn't, a lot of that first year as well was doing reps like jobs on Upwork for product descriptions and things like that. Putting in reps, developing just basic copywriting competence before I got into the financial thing. So I didn't really walk straight into that one by any means.
And then once you got the job with Scott Pape, how long did it take you to feel like, no, I finally found my footing with this?
Well, here's the interesting thing. When Scott first brought me on, it was kind of as support for what he was doing. So he wrote a weekly column, which is published in newspapers nationwide and sent out to his email list. And he just basically had a lot to write, so he wanted someone to help. And so I wasn't really entrusted with a lot of the real, what you would call financial copy for a couple of years after that. So it took quite a while. Sorry, your question was how long it took?
Yeah, to finally find where you felt like I'm competent, where I'm actually doing what one would typically consider to be the job of a financial copywriter.
Honestly, I would say that was probably 2 years. And that's after Scott hired me. That's not from starting copywriting. It was probably 2 years from that when I was actually involved in, we are, planning the stock of the month and how we're writing it up and, planning the angle and the story we're going to use, things like that you would traditionally associate with that job. I didn't really feel on top of that until maybe, late 2018 or 2019. I started to feel really comfortable with it. So that'd probably be about, 3 years after starting.
Okay. 3 years after starting. Interesting. So, Tania, I'd love to know your journey into this space as well.
You mean like you said, like how long it took?
Yeah. So from the moment that you started scraping my random messages on Discord and saw your first financial promo and decided that this is what you wanted to do, what did that road look like, and how long did it take before that first in with Banyan, and then eventually what you're doing now, which I'd love for you to talk about as much as you're able to.
Sure. So the moment I realized that teaching English online wasn't as viable as I thought, that was February of last year. And then that was the same month I joined the Discord. I think one very helpful piece of advice you gave was, don't read too many copy books, actually engage in copywriting through the 3 ways that I mentioned. So I just practiced that every single day. I tracked it. I made sure that I never stopped doing those 3 things. And I think being a former literature teacher also helped because, I used to annotate novels and plays with my students, and then annotating a promo. It was just like the purest joy for me, just reverse engineering its parts and trying to understand how it all fit together. So I dabbled in UpWork for a while, but then, I didn't know how I was doing. Like the first few clients I got on UpWork, like, they didn't track their stats, they didn't share those things. So I was like, I just want to get on a path where I can tell where I'm going. So I think I joined Copy Chief in April, and I attended like every single one of Joshua's trainings.
Joshua who?
Joshua Lee Henry, who is now the Copy Chief at Banyan Hills Money and Markets for the Adam Odell franchise. Yeah, so I thought I had to finish the entire set of like the entire year's worth of training before I could even attempt to get hired. But they released a spec assignment the first month, like they launched the club. So I was like, okay, I'm going to just try my best. And one thing that's always paid off for me when trying to break into financial copywriting anywhere is to over deliver. So they asked for one editorial. I wrote 3, and I wrote the ads for the editorials as well. And I was like, might as well turn these into lifts. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna put these together and send them off to Joshua. And I also got on call with him, and he's like, yeah, don't wait any longer. I'm gonna put you in touch with some people in other departments, and yeah, let's do this. So I was really shocked. But that gave me the confidence to move forward and to not waste any time, like not be in the dark and just tread water and not know how I'm doing. Yeah, and people in the forum, they were very generous with their like critiques and copy feedback. And I think it was in July when I got to write for the, I gotta get this right because there are 2 Baumans in Agora. This is Ted Bauman, his franchise. Yeah, so I got to write for his franchise for a back-end promo.
A back-end promo, by the way, is it's a long-form sales letter or long-form promotion or video sales letter that's designed to go to people that have already bought something. Back-end basically means it's a monetization effort. So this is typically going to be a sales letter for a $2,000 to $5,000 product.
Yeah.
So, kind of serious.
It was a lot of fun. I got great feedback from the publisher of that franchise. And then literally the day after I got paid, I wanted to get the stats on how my emails did, and everyone I worked with was gone. Before that, I was getting added to like group meetings. I had all these like calendar invites, and I was like, oh, okay, so it could be more than just these emails. But then, yeah, everyone was gone. The marketing manager was gone. So the publisher had to pull the stats herself. And I was like, hey, what's going on? And that's when the layoffs were happening. So, yeah, that was... Someone asked what's the most surprising thing that happened. That was a surprising thing that happened when I worked at Banyan Hill. My dream client, and I had folders on them. I knew the whole organizational chart, and then now half of it had been like shaved off, and it was really sad. The most significant thing I learned from that is why it's so important to constantly put yourself out there. Like me 5 years ago, if you had asked me to do this and just show up in Nashville and talk to a bunch of dudes that I never met before, I would have screamed and run in the other direction. But yeah, that experience taught me why it's so important. I went with my tail between my legs back to Joshua and Kevin, and I was like, well, who's gonna hire me? I'm brand new and everyone's getting laid off. And they're like, no, this is the moment you put yourself out there. Like everyone else is retreating. This is when, you put yourself out there and you keep yourself top of mind, and people know who you are. So I was like, fine, I'll get on social media. I started doing like promo breakdowns. So like what he said, long form sales letter, and now just get on camera and nerd out about them. And I was really shocked that clients start reaching out because of that. And that was about the same time when Kevin connected me with the Cardone job. And I was like, yeah, but it's not financial copywriting. He said, there's a real estate real estate copywriting. I was like, that could be interesting. It's real estate investing. And I did not expect to like get obsessed with real estate investing after that. Like I absolutely enjoy his products. I've seen firsthand how they've helped people. So I helped build his real estate investing newsletter from scratch. And so technically that was editorial, but I got to like see the email stats. I got to read like the audience's feedback. It was a lot of fun for me.
This is a question that goes to you both, because I know this is something that you were striving for, and this is something that you've talked to me before, which is how valuable was actually seeing data, like the actual responses to the things that you were putting out in the world, to what you wrote and how you wrote.
Was there a particular context in which we discussed this before that you're... I'm trying to gauge, like, was there an answer that I gave before that I've got a match right here?
There was something that you said to me, this is a couple of years ago at this point, where you basically said, like, one of the things that every copywriter should do is just create an email list and start emailing people.
Okay.
And one of the things that you mentioned as a sort of correlate to that is, you know, actually seeing the results of what you are doing informs, very heavily informs, the kind of messaging, the kind of thing that you do.
Right. I mean, I completely agree with that. I mean, I did say that, so I guess I've got to agree with that. That is something I've learned from running my own business, which, you know, is not financial. When I was working with Scott, a lot of the content, you know, I think this is a very interesting alternate perspective, that Scott was just very, very good. He was the guru behind it, you know, and he was fantastic at coming up with these big ideas and hooks and what people wanted. I'm trying to think of how I can explain the example in a way that, you know, would make my point. But for example, we would have content schedules. You'd be like, okay, next month we're going to talk about health insurance. Next month we're going to talk about this, okay? And we'd work on those plans. But almost every month, he would come up with an idea. It's like, no, we're going to do this instead. So he got a member who had written to him saying, with a question. He would just take questions often for content. And this old lady had seen a financial planner and from one of the major banks. And the bank had given her a plan. And Scott and his analyst had a look at it. And she would have run out of money at age 78. And they were able to see how to easily rework that plan so that she lasted till 100. Okay, and he just could instantly see, like, that is a way better hook than whatever we were going to talk about. One thing that I learned from him, and I've taken this across to my own business, is that sometimes, you know, there is a time and place for getting that market feedback and seeing what the market wants. And, you know, just to kind of go tangentially, we've talked about this before, and my approach to market research is that I have at the different levels in which you do it. And I actually, you know, have that up to level 4 is basically going off what people tell you. And then the 5th and final level is where basically you are kind of so immersed in it that you are seeing things that you know will benefit them or that they will want, that they don't even know that they're going to like, but you know they will like. Mm-hmm. And Scott was really a master at that no one had asked him, you know, I want to learn about bank financial plans and why they're bad. Like that, no one would ever ask a question about that. But he was able to see that was a really fascinating hook. And the hook he came up with that, I think, was, you know, how he used a cricket analogy, you know, and in cricket, 100 is called a century. Like you get 100 runs as a milestone in the innings. And his theme was about, you know, we managed to get her to 100 not out. Basically, we reworked it. So he got a hook out of that no one would have ever asked for, but he spotted. So your question originally was, you know, how valuable is it to watch the feedback and see how people are responding? I say absolutely crucial, but there is a certain point at which, you know, true brilliance, especially in something like financial, you know, all the great copywriters are not just reacting to what people say. They're taking that into account, but they're also able to add a flash of genius on top of that and say, no one's asked for this, but I know it will resonate with them.
If I may interpolate what you're saying a little bit, and make sure that this not only applies to people that are interested in financial copy, but also any sort of copywriting whatsoever, which is to say that like the vast majority of copy that you're going to get hired for, like out there in the world, it's pretty functional. It's a handful of bullets. It's some headlines for PPC ads. It's stuff that ChatGPT can write, litter. But there are levels of copywriting, levels of advertising where you actually do need to synthesize and figure out how to channel demand and attention in a way that nobody has done before. And a lot of the real money in copywriting, especially financial copywriting, but all copywriting, is finding either new ways to articulate an old idea or finding a new idea and finding a way to generate desire for it that did not exist before. And so what it sounds like from what you're describing to me is that Scott was a master of that type of just channeling demand, of taking this old idea and making it really evocative and interesting for people, even though people never would have pursued it on their own.
Yeah, absolutely so. And I'm glad that you generalized the lesson. I was deliberately trying to apply it to financial because that's what we're talking about. But, this is something that it's the biggest thing I learned from him that I have then applied into pretty much, anything else I've done is always with a view to how can I take my knowledge of the market but go beyond what they're saying and surprise them in ways that I know they will like, and come up with angles and hooks that no one ever asked for, but they love once they've seen it. They just, they couldn't have imagined not having liked it once you show it to them. So I think that's a very good thing to aim for. Like you said, a lot of the copy you're going to be hired for is functional. And so that's why, I do have that staged approach to market research, because if you're just getting asked to write bullets, it's not really worth the time spending a year to know the market and then becoming a master at coming up with this new stuff.
Absolutely. And so I'd love to go back to the earlier question, sort of what we were talking about, which is after Banyan and after Grant Cardone, what did you need to do to get into where you are now? Are you even able to talk about where you are now?
But I've been talking about it. No one's come after me yet. So
Fair enough.
Ben's last words.
Oh dear.
Oh God.
So to backtrack a bit, at some point at Cardone, I was promoted to assistant copy chief. I guess my copy chief saw something in me. I'm very grateful for that. And he was like, I want you to help me. So we were helping to plan out like a whole promotional calendar and, to also try out some longer form copy at Cardone. And then on Copy Chief, I saw Kevin interview Kelly Brown, of the copy chief of, Stansberry, another dream client, financial copywriting client of mine. So I remember thinking it's not possible because I have my hands full, with more responsibilities now at Cardone. So I was just watching the video and just sighing wistfully, and my partner was watching me, and I was like, you should do it. And I was like, I can't, I'm too busy, and I'm not studying financial copy full time like I was last year. I'm so rusty. I didn't think that it was possible. But, coincidentally, I already have a flight booked to America for the same week for Kevin's Copy Chief Live in St. Pete. So I was like, can't be, just a coincidence. So to give some context, Stansberry was holding a boot camp where you had to write, they call it a 4-page cover letter, but in direct response, it basically means a personal sales letter. And I know Joe Schrieffer used to get people to do that, right? He wanted to see if you could just write a letter to somebody as a test of your copywriting skills. That was the hardest piece of copy I'd ever written in my entire life because the product is me. And, I had to like get it together and believe in myself to write the thing while I was juggling everything else at Cardone. But I can't thank Kevin and Joshua enough because I never let any copy go out without someone reading it, even if it's just my own partner. And they read it. And it gave me the confidence to send it in. And then Kelly replied and was like, you have a place at the boot camp. So it was 17 of us in Annapolis. I was very jet lagged and hoping that no one would notice. It was very intense 2 days. And I was very surprised that it wasn't like a reality TV Survivor style boot camp. They were there to offer value to us too. They shared their secrets, their marketing secrets. I was amazed, like, not all of us were going to get hired, but they were very generous with offering value to us and making us feel welcome. And it was a very warm crowd, of senior copywriters and like senior staff members. I had a lot of fun. I had no idea what to make of it. As I said, I was like jet lagged. Cannot be held responsible for the things I said or did when I was there. And then when the whole thing ended, Kelly surprised us and was like, I'd like you guys to write a headline and lead based on what you have seen and heard from, the 2 days. And we had like 5 days to write that. And I remember like one of the things you said on Discord, like sometimes it can take you a month to write a lead, and the rest of the promo, which can be about 10,000 words, you can write it in a week or two. So I was like, if Sean takes a month to write a lead, like how am I supposed to write this in 5 days?
Well, to be fair, I'm a bad copywriter, so there you go.
Well, I don't know. I still don't know how that piece of copy performed because it never got used. But I was very lucky so I'm in a group in Copy Chief called like the Accelerator group, and we meet like every 2 weeks. So I was like, oh, we have a call. I will not be alone in this. And I got to talk to them. I was like, hey, would you guys mind reading this? And just having that community behind you, cheering you on. I sent it in. And then Friday, we got an email, which was very mysterious. It was just like, hi, the 8 of you, congratulations. We're going to hop on a call and you're going to find out next steps, what this means for your family and what's around the corner for you guys. And she didn't say anything at all about whether we were hired or whatever. I messaged everyone. Joshua, I messaged someone in Stansbury, I messaged Kevin, and they're like, sounds like you're getting hired. Then we got on the call and we're like, so we would like you guys to participate in a 3-month practicum. And I almost snorted on the call because the practicum is what we call the training period for teachers. And I was like, this again? So a 3-month practicum, it was paid. And we would just be studying promos every week and working on promo of our own. And there was no guarantee of a job at the end of the 3 months. So
how many people were admitted into this practicum?
There were 8 of us. I think 7 of us said yes. So it was a big risk for me because I knew from that experience of juggling the bootcamp application and full-time work that I couldn't do both. Like I had to say no to something. So I was like, okay, I'm going to, take the risk and do these 3 months, not know if I'm going to get hired at the end. But I remember telling Kevin on a day when I was feeling particularly confident, I was like, you know what, there's no guarantee I'll get hired, but I'm the guarantee. Like, I know I work hard. Like, that's the guarantee. So, yeah, we did that, and they surprised us yet again in week 9. And they're like, you know what, we're gonna still keep doing the practicum, but, you guys are hired. I guess we were all also kind of getting tired. So like 9 weeks in, we found out. And then I guess now I'm a full-time copywriter with Stansberry. Thank you.
Just for reference to everybody watching and listening to this, there's financial copywriting, certainly, and there's tiers to it. And Stansberry is probably, if not one of the biggest financial publishing businesses and direct response marketing businesses in the world. It certainly has one of the biggest and best reputations, simply because they've actually managed to treat their customers so very well over the years. Didn't just churn and burn them. And so getting hired at Stansberry is rather a big deal. And I'm very proud of you. I am very delighted to hear that you actually had that experience. I'm sorry I'm not paying attention to you, Daniel, but I want to ask Tania one more question.
It's totally fine.
I have questions for him.
I want you to ask them. And please feel free at any point, like, Sean, shut up. I want to ask Daniel a question. I'm serious.
Okay.
But, I mean, just to get personal for a moment, you're not originally from Georgia. You're from Singapore, correct?
Yeah, I'm not Georgian.
And, I'm not 100% on this. Correct me.
English is our first language. Now the whole world knows. Singapore's first language is English. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you for answering the question that I was too uncomfortable to ask. I am, after all, a white man.
I know so many Americans don't know. My own partner, he's American. He didn't know until he started dating me. So I'm used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but regardless of that, you were from Singapore. You moved to Georgia, not the state, the actual country. And then you managed to not only get a job writing email copy for Banyan, which, by the way, how many people actually get hired freelance to write lifts for any Agora company?
It's very hard because, getting an outsider who doesn't know the business to write lifts and represent the brand voice accurately, it's a big risk for the company. Yeah.
Yeah. So it generally doesn't happen. It almost never happens.
Yeah.
And to have had that parlay then into a full sales letter at a time when the business was basically laying off half their entire workforce, and then to parlay that into an assistant copy chief position at Grant Cardone's business, and then to get a job at, through the various hurdles that they put up for you at Stansberry, you just talk about that. Because one thing that I said to Daniel before you got here was that one thing that I respect about you is that you've been doing what I have been saying to a lot of people that watch Copy That, which is that, for some people it's easy, or at least easier. It's hard no matter whom you are. But for other people, you're definitely playing on hard mode as you go into one of the hardest things. And so I was wondering if you might talk about that a little bit, or at least share your thoughts.
That was a very long question. It's not fair.
Condense
it. So you mean talk about the emotional aspect of this entire journey?
Certainly, because you've been touching on that. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind expanding on it.
Sure. Yeah, I'm constantly filled with imposter syndrome. And then now I'm saying it on camera, so I can feel it grow within me right now. But I recognize that if I didn't get it under control, that it would eat me alive. It would take me away from the thing that I want most, and which is, when I was a teacher, I never even thought it was possible. Not really doing this for money. I don't even know how my first promo is going to do. I'm doing this because I want to feel like I can master something for the first time in my life. It was not possible as a teacher teaching 2 subjects and looking after the well-being of thousands of kids. My attention was too fractured. And then for someone to take a chance on me and say, for 3 months, we're going to focus on you and develop your skills get you to. In fact, the first book they had us read was Mastery by Robert Greene. So I knew I was at the right place, and knew they were going to take care of all of that. Like the best way to overcome imposter syndrome for me is to close the gap in skills, like between where I am and where I need to be. But mindset wise, a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of like, I don't deserve to be here. This is a fluke. I'm a freak. Like I wasn't even like a copywriter a year ago, that kind of thing. And I had to work on that. So I am working with like a coach who's been helping me with that. And I've gotten to a point, and then with all the positive reinforcement at Stansberry too, the seniors there, they don't put on airs. There's no ego. There's no like, you need to prove yourselves to us. Michael Ford, one of the senior copywriters. Hi, Michael. The first week there, he was like, don't hide your copy. Don't wait till it's good enough to show the seniors. Like he did that and he regrets it. So he's like, show it early, show it often. And yeah, so with all of that and putting in the work every day for the past 3 months, I finally got to a place where like, yeah, I guess I am a copywriter and that I can do this. And, who says teachers can't do anything else?
No, I'm very proud of you, and I'm very, very delighted to have seen your journey from like literally the larval stage to where you are now, and also the trajectory to where you're going to go in the future. So I'm personally acquainted with Michael. He and I talk every day, and he has nothing but kind things to say about you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is, by the way, all an attempt to make you cry for the camera. So
I have my beat on. I'm not gonna cry. So
good. But I think you raised an interesting point that I want to turn the focus back to Daniel. So you are the main character again.
Very good. The jet lag's killing me. I was about to fall asleep if you don't bring me in the next 2 minutes.
Fair enough. Tania brought up something that I see a lot of copywriters deal with, which is imposter syndrome and like the weight of everything. And you famously, perhaps infamously, have a very brash, arrogant persona that you put on in your copy and in your emails. And I know that it's an avatar, that you have created this character to. Oh.
You're talking into the microphone.
I apologize.
Talk across it for this bit.
Echo. No, like legitimately, when I did that, like it's just echoing in my earphones. Sincerely, especially after you won the contest with Ramit, and as you were starting to work with Scott, did you ever deal with imposter syndrome? Did you ever deal with the weight and like, oh my God, what the hell am I doing? Like, describe your emotional journey for me.
Yeah, so what I told you before, that it took about 3 years before I started feeling really confident in what I was doing. And for many of those first few years, particularly that very first year when I had gone into copywriting on UpWork with very little experience, and I put my shingle out as a freelance copywriter, I felt like I was faking it the whole time. And it was absolutely terrifying. I remember feeling, sorry, I'm not looking again. I remember feeling sick with worry sometimes when I would get jobs. I would manage to win the job, and it's like fantastic. And it's like, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. And it was very, very hard. The mental part of it was the hardest part for the first couple of years. When I got brought on with Scott, he was a very good mentor in that he never held back on any feedback. If something sucked, he wouldn't mince his words one bit. He would actually say, this stinks. But it was always done in a way that, I knew that I had his respect, at least, for him to be able to tell that to me. Mm-hmm. And so it helped mentoring under someone like that to deal with the harder parts of it. But it's the persona that I put on now. It's also, I am very comfortable with what I'm doing, that I am now operating in my own niche, in my own area, and I'm more in the business of being me now than I am in the business of any particular field of expertise. So in a way, that has eliminated the need for imposter syndrome, because there is, everything I do, I'm teaching what I know, what I've found, or I'm teaching what I do. There isn't much room for being an imposter there. But in the beginning stages, it was absolutely crippling. So yeah, I definitely went through it just like anyone else.
That's the question I wanted to ask him. Because I just started my own email list, and I've never written for myself before, like this for an audience. And, I'm constantly having to tell myself to stop holding back. And he doesn't hold back. So I want to know how.
When we say not holding back, what do you mean?
I don't know, like you have when I read your emails, I can imagine that there's a real person on the other side of them, and that this is what they really think. And as someone who, worked for the government for 6 years, don't know how much you know about the Singaporean government, but I had to watch a lot of what I said in the classroom. I'm very grateful that no parents have hunted me down. Like, what have you been teaching my kids? But yeah, I still have that self-censorship mode going on that I'm trying desperately to get rid of. And I know it's a process. Like, I know it'll take time before I find my voice and start writing what I really want to write in my emails. And I'm curious about your journey. I'm trying to talk into the mic, but
I know
address
this
him.
is really. I know she wants to look at me.
Grab it. Yeah.
Daniel.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah, like what was your process like? How did you get started writing just for yourself? The process of like becoming you in your emails.
Well, so a couple of things. One is that I was starting out my email list from a base of having achieved, some stuff. I'd been doing it it was 2020 when I started sending emails and building my own brand. And that was a good 4 years after I had, started copywriting. So having some experience under my belt absolutely helped. Another thing is, as Sean and I were talking about, there is a persona that comes into play. And, I'm kind of giving away something I'm going to be talking about in 2 days at Copy Chief Live. But to me, that persona acts as a shield in many ways from these feelings, because anything anyone says about me and any criticism, whatever, it's being applied to a character that I play that is or is not me as I choose. So to me, the email list is about assuming a character, putting on a mask, as it were. And I play that character, and that character can take all the arrows and whatever that people want to throw at him. But at the end of the day, I'm able to dissociate from that when I want to. And when someone says, something about me, that guy's an egomaniac, he's a jerk, I can step back and say, well, that guy is, but I'm not, but the guy I'm playing is. And that has helped me a lot and I've grown into that. So earlier on, I wasn't as brash and no filter as you're saying now. And that's something I've grown into as my confidence has come. And I think ultimately, the big secret is just experience helps everything. Doing it more. Firstly, having the experience when I started helped take away some of the imposter syndrome, and having the experience of doing it has helped me play that character better. And it's something that you are just going to get better at with time. I think you're going to find that.
Were you consciously creating a persona from the beginning, or is that something that you realized in the process?
It has developed over time. And certainly I was doing it a bit at the start, but it's something that I now actively try and lean into very, very much as I realize the value and importance of doing it.
And so what is the value and importance of doing it?
I'm just worried I'm taking us too far off your financial copywriting discussion here.
I think we've entered the freewheeling portion of this, of where I just want to pursue every single question, and then it's sort of up to Noah to figure out how to edit this.
Oh my gosh, I feel so bad for your editor.
No, it's
hey, I will touch on some of this. but I only have 20 minutes, and so only a part of that 20 minutes can be dedicated to this. So no, not heaps. What is the value of having the persona? I mean, to me, the character allows me to, number one, like I said, dissociate from criticism. That's one thing. So I told you before that I've had people say, very unpleasant things about me. And in one way, it's a shield for me. They're like, yeah, but they're not talking about me. They don't know me. They only know my character. They think that's me. I mean, there are some people, like you, and savvy people understand it. They understand that it is a character, okay? And those people, that's great. But people who don't get it, I'm able to ignore criticism because I think, well, yeah, they say that because they don't actually know what they're talking about. And I don't mean that derisively. They don't know that that's a character I'm playing. That's one benefit. Another is that the character is able to be much better at doing a lot of things than I am. So, I mean, me in person is very somewhat shy, introverted, doesn't really like talking about himself a lot. When I go on podcasts and people are introducing me and they're talking me up, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want this to stop.
That's why I launched right into it. I'm going to do that separately for you both. I'm going to record it separately just so I don't embarrass you in the process.
Exactly. Right? So all those things don't make for very entertaining content. But when you are playing the character that you want to be, you can be whoever is more entertaining or more tailored to what you're doing. And so, you mentioned that I have no filter or something. So I will say things in my emails that no way on earth I would say to a person if I were in conversation with them. Like I can't disagree with anyone in person. I'm just too timid. I will just shy away from conflict. And yet I will say the most crazy or provocative things in my email list because just the evil genius takes control of it and he says it. So I will write a lot of that stuff where you can feel the fun coming through. I have a big grin on my face because I'm like, oh man, this guy's going to get in so much trouble for this one. But not
Your
me.
recent emails lambasting America have been delightful, by the way.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly like that, right? I would never go up to an American friend of mine and just start saying like, what is wrong? Unless I was really tight.
Unless
with
we're
that
talking
friend.
to me.
But if it's an acquaintance though, I'm not going to go up to them and say like, your country's messed up, man. Like, what is in your freaking chicken tortillas?
That's a lot.
Is there something you do to get into that persona? Or you just sit down in front of the computer and it just switches on?
I would say that it's something that I have honed over time is that kind of how would I define it? A subset of my mind is dedicated to being that. And I can always identify, things that I can spin into content or that I can riff on as email Daniel, or we'll call him Australia's best copywriter. Like I would never go around and say that ever. I'd never say that to someone. Hi, I'm Australia's best copywriter. Never in my life. And yet that's on my homepage. That's the first thing you see, right? So that's the character at work there. And I think I have that in a subset of my mind that I can turn on or off as I want to. It's not really something that I do to get into that character. It's that the character kind of exists in there. And it's more like I dissociate from it when I don't want to. Like when I have got criticism or, something's going particularly hairy or something, that's a time when I like to, I can shut the laptop and I'll go play with my kids, and that guy doesn't exist. The rest of the world can be foaming with rage at whatever Daniel just did. But to me, he doesn't exist at that point, okay? And that's just one way of dissociating from it and handling it. But it's kind of always in me, if you will. There's nothing that I do to sort of get into that mode, if that's what you're asking.
That's so interesting.
So, I mean, based on that, what is your takeaway from that? What do you feel like you can use in that for what you're doing? Because you're obviously not, writing emails every day, trying to build this persona. Your bread and butter is going to be inhabiting somebody else's byline.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think voice always fascinates me. Like there was a point in time when I had to get into Grant Cardone's voice and like be him. And I think at this point, I'm just going to go around and like badger different people. I'm going to ask Marcella the same question and like, how do you, write these? And I can tell it's you.
Marcella's great, by the way.
Yeah, and I don't know yet if I'm going to, like it reminds me of Jekyll and Hyde, what he described.
Very
And
much
I
so.
don't know if that's my process yet. I'm just gonna, I'm going to, I think a few weeks ago, I made a decision to be less rigid or planned about this whole thing. I'm not gonna plan my content. I'm not going to like right now I'm just doing a series about my crazy adventure in St. Pete and Annapolis with the boot camp and what's coming next, what next week's piece might look like might be different. I mean, I'm also like a visual artist, so at some point there might be graphics involved. Who knows? I'm just gonna roll with it, and I think I'll let that be the one part of like my copy practice that's not as planned and organized, because I'm a very organized person in my full-time work. Yeah.
Awesome.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Simply because, we're all at various stages of a journey.
Yeah.
And the journey is not over for any of us.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the things that delights me in this particular conversation is that everybody gets to share like, where they were at the beginning and how they sort of like overcame certain hurdles. And so sort of on that note, I would ask you both, especially early on in your career, what were some of the best resources that allowed you to learn or to not only gain competence, but also confidence in what you were doing?
What resources are you talking, like books, courses, videos?
Books, courses, videos, mentors.
Okay. Well,
Totems.
That
the
was
Bible.
what I was. Yes. No, not really the Bible, I think, for copywriting lessons. I would say the biggest thing for me, and I like to pride myself on being consistent, at least with this message since I started. The biggest thing that has impacted me was mentoring under Scott, someone who was really, really good, and working under him so long, so closely, and having him be very, very honest about when something was not good. It's very, I see a lot of copy critiques that are given online that are just way too gentle. And, I've in certain copy communities, like, because they have a really nice supportive vibe, that can actually hurt. And I remember once I was in one of these communities and a guy had posted something and I left a remark, like everyone else had said, I'll do this and do this and do this. And I said, I stopped reading after this point. Your entire premise is wrong. I was not interested in reading through. Everyone else's comment they've read through the whole thing, assuming that a reader's going to read through the whole thing, but I'm not. As a reader, I'm just not interested. And the person got really offended and got really angry at me. And like, they were like, your flippant remark doesn't help, because my thing was really short. All I needed to say was, idea was wrong straight from the start, didn't want to read it. It was a very short comment. However, that kind of feedback was what was so helpful to me. When I would write, 5-page sales letter or, 10-page, whatever it is, and I'd turn it in, and the comment is like on the first page, it's like, do this again. He hasn't even gone through it. Okay, that is so valuable, getting that level of bluntness and honesty. And the reason that most people don't get it is they can't handle it. And most people say they can handle it, but they actually can't, because it really freaking hurts when that happens. Any successful copywriter knows that hurts so much because your ego is so involved in that. And when someone says that's terrible, that's like crushing to you. But if you can't handle that, then you are never going to grow. So the single biggest thing for me was that kind of mentorship, where I had a really, really good copywriter and marketer being really, really honest with me.
You said two things there that I have been pounding the table on for years, which is very simply like, the best feedback you can give somebody is, if I were your reader, I would have stopped reading at this point. I couldn't even make it through, because no reader is ever going to charitably give you their time and attention.
You are
Yep.
preaching to the choir, man. I completely agree with you. Scott has done this to me on actual personal emails I've sent him that weren't copy I was submitting. One time I actually had a complaint, like something about a contractual thing or something, and he actually replied to my email with, "I stopped reading here and I assume it's all the same after this." Like, now you can listen to that and think, wow, what a jerk. But like, I always was like, I'm so much better for that kind of honesty. And there are so few people who are willing to look like a jerk enough, or at least be trusted enough that they have your best interest at heart to do that kind of thing. Even I, with my students, when I was coaching them, I would have to constantly say, like, is it all right if I'm being blunt with you? Because people will say yes, but then you can tell it hurt them.
Yeah.
They would say, yeah, be blunt. And I would be blunt. And I could tell they were really hurt by it. I was like, well, that's the thing. You've got to be able to accept that if you want to level up. You've got to be able to take that level of honesty and criticism.
And really quick, I was going to signal to you to bring the microphone a little bit closer to your face.
It's pointing right at me, dude. Okay.
Well, you kept doing
Okay.
this.
I'm sorry. Yeah. All right. I am a terrible podcast guest.
Honestly, I stopped listening to you like an hour ago.
Touche.
The second takeaway from that particular nugget that Daniel just gave that I think is also exceptionally valuable is that kind of feedback forces you to confront, I think, a hurdle that almost every copywriter has to confront, certainly every writer. And I had to do this. Fortunately, I was able to do this when I was getting my second master's degree in creative writing, because I had just been beaten down. At a certain point, like, I learned how to divorce myself from the work. Most copywriters, if you tell them it's not the best thing in the world, they get so offended.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, like, writing copy, especially long form copy, it's emotional. You're putting your time, you're losing sleep over it, you're, ignoring your children about this. Like, it's hard work. And to devote that much time and effort and energy, you certainly devote part of your ego, part of your identity into this piece of writing that at the end of the day has to exist separate from you and stand up on its own. And, a lot of people can't hack that. A lot of people never cross that bridge. Mm-hmm. And that is, I think, one of the things that prevents a lot of people from becoming good copywriters. They are never able to divorce themselves from the work. So.
I have to say I'm really grateful for my art school experience, because critiques were a daily thing. You just bring, and it's art, so your heart is and your soul is in there, and you bring in, and then it gets thrown out, and then you go back in. So the whole deadening inside to your, like, separating yourself from the creative effort took place like when I was 18 to like 20 something. Yeah. But
the earlier the better. Daniel talked about mentorship, and I think that's exceptionally valuable. And the cool thing about the mentorship that he got is he literally got paid to be mentored. And that's the advantage of, like, having a full-time job. And a lot of copywriters entering this space today, I think, would balk at that. Work. Ew. But what resources did you find particularly helpful and valuable? And you're not allowed to give the same answer.
Joe Schrieffer's Agora Copy Camp. I took copious notes. I felt like I was there in the room learning from him. He has no idea who I am, but I will forever be. So it's not the exact same answer. He wasn't my mentor, but just watching, I think, all 18 hours of it. And he helped me get a sense of what Agora is, because it can be really hard for someone outside of it to understand this whole beast. And understanding how different pieces of copy tie in with each other, like what lifts are, his own unique format for writing them, and his approach to promos, and I think, like, that course also came with his personal swipe file, so I also got to see how he would mark up promos and his thoughts, and sometimes he would be super unimpressed with the promo and be like, question mark, like this is weak. Yeah, that was probably the most pivotal part of my journey. That helped me know what to look out for when I was going off on my own to like mark up promos and study them. It was that. But the second one would be, I think, working with Mike Palmer during the practicum, because talking to him is like, for someone who doesn't have years of experience with the target audience, you know, talking to him is like talking to the target audience. He'll tell you straight to your face, that idea won't work. You know, this won't sell. You can try it, but I wouldn't try it. And I'm like, why would I try something that Mike Palmer wouldn't try? So, and he would give it to us straight. And to build on what, you know, Daniel said, to be able to get someone's honest feedback, then when you hear good feedback, you know it really means something, like that you've created something to actually be proud of, and not just like expect that everything is a prize and everything is
You earned it.
perfect. Yeah, exactly. But you know, now I still have kind of like a mini Mike Palmer on my shoulder when I think of new promo ideas. And
By the way, Mike Palmer is he's the copy chief and co-owner of MarketWise, the umbrella business that owns Stansberry and Associates Research. He's commonly considered, and I consider him to be like the GOAT, as in greatest of all time, of front end acquisition copy, especially big idea copy going to unaware audiences. Most businesses never try to talk to unaware audiences and never try to reach cold audiences with big ideas. And he is by miles the best at that. And he's mentoring and has mentored Tania, and that's really cool. So I've been mentored by some really cool people, and I've only interacted with Mike Palmer once. And it's one of those things where it's like, you speak to him for more than 2 seconds and you go, oh my God, this guy's a fucking genius.
yeah.
But he's on your shoulder right now, and what is he telling you?
When I'm brainstorming ideas, like he'll just say that will never sell. And I think that's another important thing about hearing all kinds of feedback, is after a while you kind of embody that the kind of like the voice or the discernment of someone more experienced than you. It's not just like his voice. I also hear like my copy chief, you know, and that's something that's deliberate at Stansberry. Like we have like weekly copy reviews, and it's not because you're supposed to like take everyone's feedback and incorporate it into your promo. Because like I tried that and I went insane for a week and couldn't write. It's more that after a while you get a sense of the common things that people will call out in your copy, and then you have your own. You start to develop your own critical eye for your copy, which is, it's so important to take feedback. Like just take it, and it's not personal. Nobody hates you, but if they hate bits of your copy, it's really okay. Just take it.
Yeah, one piece of advice that I've started giving to people is that if you really want to be a writer, the first thing that you should do is delete literally everything that you just wrote and start again from the blank page. No matter what you just wrote, just delete everything and start over again.
So that's exactly another, you know, pivotal part of my journey, is that remembering what you said. The original version was whatever you've written that you feel super proud of, like tuck it away in a drawer and don't look at it for like 10 days. Obviously nothing I write can be tucked into drawers now. It's like all on computers, but you know, what I took away from that is like nothing that you write, even if you slaved over it, nothing that you write is as brilliant as you think it's going to be. And we never know what's going to work out there in the market. So whatever feedback you can get is just going to make things better, and just things as they are, they can always be better.
Absolutely. But sort of on that note, and the notion of taking feedback, and this applies to both financial copy, but it also applies broadly to any sort of copy. And I know both of you have worked with other copywriters before. What are the most common mistakes you see people making? What are the things that new copywriters are just constantly messing up, especially in sales letters? especially structurally, but just broadly, you can talk about?
I don't actually look at that many sales letter efforts, at least not recently. I mean, most of what I see is people doing email. So if that's interesting to you as well to hear, like, I would say that number one, people aren't very good at identifying really strong sales ideas, like of connecting, setting up a sales idea in the first half of your argument. Or, for example, tying a story to a sales idea. Most people don't actually understand how stories are supposed to be used in an email. And
how are they supposed to be used in an email?
There are a few ways of using them, but you can either use a story to set up a sales idea, like the Wall Street Journal letter, sets up the story, sets up the idea. There is something, that makes the difference in your career, and that something is knowledge, and the knowledge is what the journal is going to give you, okay? The story sets up that idea very directly. The other way of using stories, there is an exception, but I don't want to get too detailed, but it's to actually just deepen a relationship, and then it's not the story doing the selling, it's you doing the selling. And the story is merely setting up the relationship. And a huge mistake that I see people doing is they'll look at someone like me, who's mostly using that second approach, that I'm telling stories that have nothing to do with what I'm selling, because the stories are developing trust. And then I'm doing the selling. Okay,
well, your character is doing the selling.
Well, right, exactly, my character. But these people will then say, they'll come up with a random story and they'll tie it onto a sales pitch, but they haven't built up that trust capital over a long time, for example. And they'll try it, and the story-based email flops because they misunderstood what that particular story was supposed to be doing. If they wanted to have a story that sold, the story needs to have the moral that contains the sales idea that's selling. And that's one big thing that I see copywriters doing all the time. They do it wrong. Another is that they just tell too much in their emails and they don't show. They are not painting things that I can see. And I've been mentoring two of my brothers this year on, growing their businesses, totally unrelated to copywriting. One's in the mental health space and the other is a personal trainer. Okay, so totally different niches. But they're trying to model what I'm doing with email, add an email marketing component to what they're doing. And a big problem I get with their emails is they will just be talking at the reader rather than actually showing them a scene. So my brother sent me an email the other day. It was like, his subject line was, "Why I hate my girlfriend," just a little edgy hook. And then it's like, I don't hate her all the time, but you see, she does this thing and she's always really optimistic. And, whenever something happens, she'll take it as an opportunity. I said, no. And I rewrote it for him. I just replaced the start of it with a scene, like just with dialogue of them going back and forth and joking that showed what he was trying to tell me. And I was like, see, that makes all the difference. And that's something I do very heavily in my emails. But a lot of effective story-based copy does that. It's showing you something and not telling. Now, you would think people know this because show, don't tell is supposedly one of the most basic copywriting rules. And yet, this is one of the biggest things that I see people doing wrong. It's one of the biggest tells that you're dealing with a rookie copywriter is that there's nothing to see. Stephen actually recommended the book Storyworthy to me by Matthew Dix. Fantastic book, a couple of years ago. Very influential on my storytelling. And I have to give him credit because he has this wonderful idea of when he's telling a story, there must never be a blank screen. So that you always have to have something that the reader is visualizing in their mind when you're telling a story. And if the screen is blank at any point, then you've failed. And so I think that's a very good idea that I try and apply to when she gets out the notebook during the interview, you've done it right.
What's the book called again?
Storyworthy by Matthew Dix. It's a fantastic book. So then they are telling and not showing. So they're two massive mistakes. I mean, there's probably heaps, but those two make up a very, very large proportion of what I see wrong. I know you asked about sales letters, but I don't really review as look at many of them.
Don't even fret about that. These are questions that I got from other people, and I'm trying to yoke them into the conversation.
Gotcha.
We've fortunately organically sort of actually led to most of them, which is fine.
I love that.
But I'm very curious to hear some of the common mistakes that you have identified, especially in writing, because you've been teaching writing for a long time. And so I'm curious to hear two things. One is the common mistakes that you see people make. You read more sales letters than Daniel, so especially in sales letters. But also, secondly, moving from teaching English to now all of a sudden reviewing copy. How has your litmus test for quality changed?
All right, so the first one is about, you mean when I'm reading sales letters?
Written by anybody or any copy that has
Yeah.
been submitted to you.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm in so a seed inbox is like an inbox where you just receive emails from, clients you might want to work for and see what their copy looks like right now. And I'm always keeping an eye on my seed inbox. And ever since I've started working for Stansberry, I think the biggest mistake I see in financial promos is when they miss the opportunity to start building a relationship with a potential long-term customer in the promo. And the promo is all just hype and gimmick, which can be used artfully, but most of the time it's, if I see that mistake in promo, it's shallow. There's no depth of research. It's not teaching the prospect anything. They could spend an hour watching that promo and not walk away with anything valuable. For me, that's a big mistake because the biggest thing I've learned at Stansberry is anytime you reach out to a prospect or a customer is an opportunity to deepen your relationship, which translates to the lifetime value of that person, right? And, you don't want to mess any of that up. And I really, as a former teacher, I just appreciate that approach that we take at Stansberry to, it's something that my copy chief has said repeatedly. Even if the prospect doesn't buy anything from us, they'll remember they learned something from us. And maybe the next time they watch another of our promos is when they buy. Yeah. So for me, that's the biggest mistake I see. And I suspect that a lot of the more hypey promos might have high refund rates as well. And, you don't want that. You don't want to walk around saying oh, this promo made several $1 million, but then it also had a lot of refunds. Yeah.
I also find that selling with a lot of hype and a lot of promises and stuff like that tends to lead to a lower quality customer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because if somebody is only buying because you're directly or indirectly promising that you'll get them, I don't know, $10,000 a month or something like that, that person who responds to that message and buys into that hype, they're not going to be a very good customer for your business.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever had experience with that?
With having customers who bought in on hype? In my business?
Well, I know that you don't sell, but I'm wondering if you sell with hype and lofty promises. And again, one of the things that I admire about the way that you sell and Stansberry, one of the things I admire about Stansberry is that they don't do this, is that you avoid hyperbole. You avoid, you are, after all, Australia's
I know what
best.
you mean. Exactly. I think that's actually a great point, okay, because I do use hype, exaggeration, hyperbole, whatever. What it never is around is reclaimed results. Mm-hmm. Okay, I definitely use it in storytelling, in my persona, but never in claimed results. So I've worked with clients and I don't want to name anyone, but I have worked with clients that were definitely on the more, hypey side of the spectrum. And that I saw that led to problems with customers, because when you make these big claims, it's not even a case, which I completely agree with you, by the way, you attract a worse kind of customer, but even not terrible customers, if you tell them this is going to be the most incredible thing you've ever seen, and it's, you know, it's merely good, well, you've suddenly let them down. And so even then you have an issue that even good customers can become disappointed when you start over-promising and over-exciting people. And so one thing I have tried to do in my business, having learned from that experience, and also I credit Ben Settle a lot for this because he's a very good person to follow for that kind of thing, you know, his very takeaway selling, is that I will always try and get people to sell themselves on what they're doing. And I will almost never promise an outcome. And someone actually asked me recently, he's like, how do you get me to buy so much stuff when I go back through your copy and you never promise that I'm going to get a result, but I still feel like I'm going to get something amazing? And, you know, I think partly that's just developing trust with your customers that you are going to do the right thing by them. But also there is, you know, if you are correctly using storytelling and, for example, identifying their problems correctly, there's a real sense of, you know, when a doctor can diagnose what we're feeling, it's like we instantly trust them. So there are other things you can do in copy than just promising results that are going to get you the same effect without the disappointment of the customer. So it's a great story that sets up the right idea is one. Really nailing the pain points they're feeling so that they feel completely understood and trust you as the doctor who's going to fix it is another. And when you do things like that, you are able to make the sales argument without the weight of expectation that, you know, is ultimately going to let you down. And so that, I think, is a better long-term strategy.
Yeah. And long-term strategy to what end?
Well, I mean, we were talking before about a recent FTC case where, you know, someone had been using very, very get-rich-quick hypey promises, and this is very recent, and the FTC's fined them, you know, $2.5 million, which they're going to have to be set aside to refund customers. So when I say long-term, I don't just mean long-term you have happier customers and less stress. You certainly do, but also long-term, you know, that person has made $2.5 million less dollars than they've been boasting about for the last few years. So long term, it wasn't very financially profitable either. Whereas if they'd gone with a more reasonable approach in the copy, it may not have ended so badly. So I think long term on pretty much every metric, I think financially it's superior, as well as peace of mind, happier customers, lower refunds, everything that makes a business run smoothly.
Certainly. So I think that actually creates a good segue to a slightly different track, semi-related to financial copywriting, but sort of related to copywriting overall, which is that there is, I think, possibly justified, possibly not, a stigma against copywriting and copywriters, scam artists, get-rich-quick assholes, etc. And I wanted to hear you guys talk about or sort of express your thoughts about the state of copywriting today in terms of the ethical considerations, in terms of, you know, what are the responsibilities and obligations a copywriter has, not only to the truth, but also to the customer.
Oh, that was the end of the question. Okay.
Less of a question, more of a prompt.
So as someone from Singapore who has never read direct response until like last year, everything I read felt like a scam. You know, and I think I actually asked you this question, you know, what if I'm writing copy for, at the time I thought I was going to look for like financial copywriting clients in Singapore. Like, why are you writing for clients that aren't as aggressive sounding? And then you pointed me in the direction of Stansberry and then a few other, I think Whitney Tilson. Mm-hmm. And I said, study their tone and look at the way they educate their customers. So I think that set me off on the right foot. Set me off, you know, in a great way, because then I was able to find clients to write for where I didn't have to resort to making claims that I didn't believe in. I think it's really important for me, like, to believe in the claims I'm making, even if it's on someone else's behalf. Yeah. So I have to believe in the product. I think it can show if the copywriter doesn't believe in a product and writes copy for a certain client. Don't write anything that you would be ashamed of showing your own family members. Or don't write anything that you wouldn't be ashamed to show, like, a New York Times journalist. Like, they can investigate every claim and it checks out. Yeah. So for me, that's my barometer. Other than believing that the product works, it has a good track record. The guru isn't just making shit up,
Yeah, I think those two tests are very useful. They're the same tests that I do.
I completely agree. And there is one caveat. And there are situations when a copywriter can be stuck in a situation where, they can't turn down the job or not easily turn down the job. Or it's not just a matter of saying, no, I'll take the next project. It's like, no, that's your job there. And your job's gone if you say no. And that's tough. I want to acknowledge that's a real thing. I've been in that situation before where, like, I was working kind of, for simplicity, let's say an agency. And, the team were counting on me. So I wasn't the one choosing the client. They bring in the client and it's like, okay, we've done our bits now. Like, you're writing the copy here. And I'm like, I would never have taken this client on myself. But if I say no, like, my team is screwed. And so there are situations when you have to go through something like that. I do believe in having a firm line that, there are things that I would just absolutely walk away from. And that's personally defined. And I agree that it comes through in the copy to an extent if you don't believe in it. But I also think there is a professional duty that you have as a copywriter sometimes, that even if you don't fully believe in something, there are situations where you have to write the copy. And if you are in that situation where, walking away is not an option, which, we all agree that's a good option if you can take it. But if it's not, your job is still to do the best selling job you can. And an example of that is I once worked for a client, in that similar agency model where the work came in and I was writing for this. It was literally, I can't think of a better way to describe it than it was a course on feminism by a foul-mouthed feminist celebrity who liked the F word. Like, and you know me, I don't swear.
The F word is feminist, right?
No, not the feminist word.
Sorry, I get confused sometimes.
The slightly less bad one. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay, but I'm sorry. That was the bad Daniel. He came out.
We got a taste.
It was a joke, man. Cancel me if you want. I'll just benefit from it. And
It's already preparing.
You've already tried once. You've already tried canceling me once, and look how it worked out for me.
Yeah, we became friends. Go figure.
Yeah, so I did not want to write that sales letter, but at the same time, I was like, this is my job. I'm going to do the best I can. And I hate the letter that I wrote, but, I wrote the best feminist sales letter I could with the F word in the headline. And our designer for the team, she got it. She was like, did Daniel write this? She couldn't believe what she was reading. But I mean, ideally, you don't want to be in that situation. But I do have this conviction that as a copywriter, your job isn't just to go around saying, these are my beliefs and that's all I'll ever do. I mean, if you want to get so successful that you can put yourself in that situation, then fine. But very few people are in that situation, and you may, as long as it's not a line you can't cross, I believe that it's your duty to do the best thing you can and still be capable of showing up and doing a fantastic sales pitch for a product that, like, politically, economically, whatever, you don't believe in. You should still be capable as a copywriter of selling that thing as hard as you can.
Yeah, I agree. Let's spend the next hour of this conversation talking about duty, specifically, like, as framed by Cicero.
Okay, like, I wasn't sure if you were serious there until we got to Cicero. Oh.
In terms of copywriting, I want the focus to be on financial copywriting, but it can be just broad. Because, Gesundheit, one thing that I have sort of noticed in you both is that you both, one of you started as a generalist and the other tried it and it didn't really fit. And the advice I typically give to people is, unless you know very specifically what you want to do, you're just dead set on a particular path, don't try to niche down. Be a generalist and let the niche sort of pick you. Jobs will pick you. And so in terms of like actually getting into financial copy or copywriting in general, what advice would you give to people who are, sort of in that 0 to 0.2 stage? Not quite the what is copies stage.
This is a really Tanya question, because I didn't choose financial copywriting, like in the sense that I had that client approach me and he was kind of a dream client for me. Yeah. He was someone that I had personally followed, and so that kind of fell into my lap. But in terms of getting into the world deliberately, she knows way more.
So, that's why I wanted to frame the question for you both, because you both took different paths in. And so what advice would you give to not only somebody just starting out, but perhaps somebody starting out who perhaps wants to get into financial copy?
Well, what I'm saying is that if you know you want to get into financial copywriting, there are better pathways than the one I took. That's kind of my point. That I would actually go to someone like Tanya who has gone through those pathways and gone to the firms and, applied to them. Because with me, it was a very accidental thing. I think I am more an illustration of why you should be willing to, as you say, let the niche choose you. But if the question is you're fixed on financial, then
I'm going to try to rephrase the question
no,
so that I can
I'm just
actually
trying to get it over
a
to
goddamn
her.
answer out of you, Daniel.
I'm just trying to handle this one
If you
away.
were dead set on stumbling into the financial industry in financial copywriting, what advice would you give to a newbie?
My gosh. Weren't we having a discussion before about how when I don't feel like I know an answer,
Yes,
I am
I know.
stubborn about not giving an answer?
And that's why I rephrased the question.
Golly. If I knew I wanted to do financial, then... Wait.
Again, like I said,
Okay.
you don't have to know
I'm not
just
grasping
any
this.
advice to a newbie trying to get into copywriting. What
Okay.
advice would you give to them? Financial, optional.
Getting into copywriting, oh my goodness. I really don't know. I just don't deal with beginners, man.
Yeah.
Honestly, I just feel like I'd be giving some tried answer. It's like just read some old good copywriting books is what I like, and I honestly don't know from there. This is really where with my business that teaches copywriters, I have an intermediate level cutoff for when I will take someone. So this honestly isn't something I've thought about, and I feel like I'd just be defaulting to kind of buzzwords and lines, read some books and follow some email lists. I don't even believe that. I don't believe you're going to learn copywriting following some email lists, but I'm really trying to deflect this question from me, dude. It's not a me question.
No, I get that. But I'm hoping you did end up giving some decent advice in there. What books do you think people should read if they are just starting out, if they are below that intermediate level cutoff?
I can actually kind of answer your question. If you want to stumble into financial and you want to read a book, read The Barefoot Investor. That's like the book that I launched. I think that book is a fantastic... Always be self-promoting. That book is a fantastic illustration. That book launched a massive empire, and there's a reason for that. You'll actually notice many similarities between the way that book is written and the way I write my copy now. So that's a very non-copywriting book that I actually think is really worth a read for copywriters. I also love John Carlton's Kick-Ass Copywriting Secrets of a Marketing Rebel. That's my all-time favorite copywriting book. I love that book. I've read and listened to it so many times. And in that book, there are many arrows to other things to learn. And that's where I got a lot of my reading list from starting where John directed me and branching out from there.
That was an excellent answer. I actually haven't read John Carlton's books.
Really?
So yeah, I need to.
Wow, dude. that's why you said you're not a good copywriter. It's because you haven't read.
Well, I'm glad, like a white-haired doctor, we finally diagnosed the problem. So
Finally,
you've been released.
the beginner copywriter question. Oh no.
I mean,
He tried 4 times.
I
I was
know.
counting.
I know. I like needling a little bit. It's a personal character flaw. But that does make me want to ask you another question.
Oh no.
Give me a moment.
I can wait.
Thank you.
Oh dear.
Why? Because, listen, my business really is geared towards beginners, like true beginners. Like, I'm hoping to... I beg your pardon?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. So I'm really in the business of taking people from like, what is this copywriting thing, to being like, okay, I can kind of get a toehold in this, and from there I can point them in like the direction of you or in the direction of a book or other resources that are available. But why have you consciously made that decision to just put a hand in front of the face of a newbie and say,
Not you.
not you, get out of here?
Yeah. Well, a few reasons. Number one, they're not as good customers for me because copywriters are so flaky. Any other profession, like if you're selling to chiropractors, there is a very, very good chance that the guy who buys from you now because he's a chiropractor is going to be a chiropractor in 5 years. He can't just get out of... He has to sell his practice and, give up his qualifications or whatever. It's just not going to happen. Copywriters were like, 90% of them were one day, copywriting? What's that? Oh, hey, mum, today I'm a copywriter. And then like 6 months later, I can't get any clients. This sucks. I'm going to go be a graphic designer, or something like that. And not everyone, but that's a huge amount of copywriters. So number one, sure. I've found that I don't really want to deal with people at that level because that's the kind of thing you're facing. You just have... I don't like people buying my product and then saying they quit copywriting a few months later. I'd rather you didn't buy my product then, but just because it didn't help you. And ultimately, I want to help you. I want to sell you stuff that you're going to use. Another thing is just... I feel like there are so many people going for that market that it's not really something that I can't do better than someone like you at dumbing down. I'm not being derisive.
Well, it's because I mimic the audience.
Simplifying, simplifying copywriting to make sense to a beginner. I haven't done it for so long, and I try and be cognizant of my own limitations. That I am now operating through a very serious case of the curse of knowledge, where I can't, when I'm teaching my brothers stuff, I just do stuff that's so instinctive. They're like, how did you do that? And I look at it, I'm like, oh boy, we got to start back there. We got to start at like read your work aloud or write to one reader kind of level. And it's like, it's so long since that stuff was consciously on my mind that I'm not a good teacher of it anymore. So I just made a conscious decision that I'm not the best person. It's just not my best area of leverage. Mm-hmm. I'd rather focus on being an advanced teacher. It's, more competitive, more challenging, exciting space for me to be. And yeah, I will leave the hard part as far as I'm concerned to people like you, man, because yeah, Stephen has experience. He ran a copywriting business that was aimed at that sort of thing. And they are very flaky, very, very flaky at that level.
Stephen, do you want to talk about that a little bit? Your experience with that?
Oh no. If I have to.
No, you absolutely don't have to.
Give me a direct question.
So, I guess the question that I have for you is, what are some of the issues with running a copywriting education business geared towards beginners? And this is less for people that want to start a business like this and more geared towards like facing reality, the sheer reality that beginners are going to have to face.
Okay.
That was a great question, man. I'm really admiring It was. I'm serious.
I think the biggest problem is that the advice that sounds the coolest and will like grab in readers is often the worst. And sometimes the best advice looks lame and it's not exciting, because copywriting isn't a knowledge game, it's a practice game. You can't just like read art books and then like make a masterpiece because you like took in a lot of knowledge. You could look at a museum for like 50 million hours. It doesn't make you good at creating. And you know, they're like kind of the whole thing of being good at making content as like a creator who's teaching copywriting is like, oh, how do I name the technique? Like, how do I make it sound sexy? And the most effective teachers, you know, have to juggle those things of like, okay, I know if I teach what people actually need to hear, as Daniel was talking about, advice just being like, oh, this sucks, like I didn't even finish reading or whatever, can be the most valuable feedback, but it doesn't feel like good feedback. If you're reading like a forum thread or whatever and, you know, reading through comments, the person who read the whole page and gives you like little nitpicks the whole way, you're gonna be like, wow, that was the most useful. But it's the reverse. And so as a beginner, you can't tell the difference between good advice and bad advice until you've just like read all of it. You have to learn from like 20 different people, 50 different people before you see the patterns of like, oh, I see the people who are just recycling the same stuff and like slapping a different name on it. And then past that, it's like you won't really like feel what's most valuable till you start writing stuff. And then, you know, you just know what, like after the dust settles, after you've had your copy like marked up by like real clients in the wild, that's when you know, oh, these things I was trying to follow didn't work. This more boring stuff, like I don't even remember who said it. It's just like in the back of my head, one of those 50 people I followed, I guess that's the advice that stuck. And that's very, very hard, because even when you know that that's the problem and you're like a new copywriting guru trying to like make a name for yourself and make good content, it's like, okay, I know, I'll just only teach the good advice. And then still you don't reach people in the way that you would ideally hope for. And so you get into a weird space where either you have to, you know, only teach intermediate people, which is a, you know, very valid strategy. But if you want to go after beginners, you know, arguably the best way to like get results is to encourage your audience to read people other than just you. And, you know, that's a whole bag of worms. But going back to your like original thing of, okay, from the creator perspective, like making content, teaching beginners, I feel like the real core of it is you have to have like a feedback loop to develop anything in copywriting. And no like one-way blog post or even video course, you could have 1,000 hours of video. It can only like get close to it, but that's not somebody giving feedback on your direct copy. The best you can get is probably like having videos where, you know, you're tearing down someone's copy, and then, you know, your students can watch that as, you know, a third party, but it's never their own. And maybe they'll recognize, you know, mistakes that they also make. But, you know, for every like actually good copywriter in the world, they're gonna have a similar story as these two, where like, oh, I just had an expert actually, you know, do it for me. And anyone who like tries to make the claim that like, oh, my like whatever blog post is just so good, my video courses are so good, it's gonna be, you know, it's gonna replace having actual feedback and you actually having to do work, they're kind of lying. So yeah, that's my answer. I don't know if I even...
No,
that was great.
That was a fantastic answer. And I think that was educational, not just for potential creators in this space, but also for people trying to get into this space. Because I think that a mistake that a lot of newbie copywriters make is well, buying into the notion that there's a framework or a specific template or a specific the best way to get clients is through Instagram outreach, like some stupid nonsense like that. When really what they should be learning is like the principles of copywriting and persuasion in writing, of which, like, let's be real, there's only like 167 secrets. And like at a certain level, everybody learns them, just from doing it. Mm-hmm. You figure it out eventually. Maybe only 162. Who knows? So like really the only way to differentiate in this space, at least before I started my business and tried to do really wacky, stupid stuff, is, like you said, create some new systematization, create some new name for something, create some new framework or template, or just sell copywriting as a lifestyle opportunity, which, because copywriting is so saturated, that's really all you can do. Because if you just came out like me and said, well, let's be real for a moment, there aren't that many secrets. Anybody can learn this if they just had the right exposure to the right stuff over time. Then you can't sell a fancy course. It's certainly not one that's $499. But you can pay $20 to join the Copy That Patreon. The Copy That Patreon, the only Copy That Patreon in existence. No, so I mean, just on your note, like I have sort of discovered a lot of the same stuff as well along the way, and one of the reasons why I started this business was because of the same issues that you both bring up, and it's why we're trying to do things a little bit differently. So like for $20, we have a live stream every week or so where we do actively like respond to and like try to critique people's copy. And we try to set it cheap enough so that anybody feasibly could get access to that. So it's something that we're trying to do. I don't know if it's going to succeed. I have no idea whatsoever. I might just like cancel this whole business, Copy That thing, and like we're just gonna. This is just
You're a brave man. You actually asked why I didn't target beginners. I think a third answer. Yeah, I remember running a copy critique program, and it was the most painful thing I remember doing, because it was depressing. And quite seriously, it was depressing seeing copywriters submit work that was constantly making the same mistakes, giving them the feedback, and they kept doing it. Yep. And that's actually really discouraging as a teacher.
Yeah.
When you're working with students who don't improve, and I think when you're working at the low end of the pool, like the end where there's not any barriers, people who've just entered the field, you haven't yet filtered out people who actually don't have any talent at it. And I'm not trying to be mean, but there are just some people who are not going to make it, and they haven't been filtered out yet. And it's very, very hard as a teacher to keep up your motivation. You would know as a teacher, when you have students who are just not improving despite your best efforts, is really a drag. So I don't envy you that part of it, honestly.
I will admit to some seething disdain at times. No, I do the best that I can. It's difficult because I do straddle that world between copywriting and marketing, and also finance and investment analysis. And the one thing I learned from the financial side is very simply that there are winners and losers in this life, and no matter how many raisins you put into a turd, it's still a turd. There's a very, very high raisin to turd ratio before you start thinking it's anything else.
Now I just can't stop thinking about putting raisins in turds.
Did I mention that I'm actually getting pretty hungry? I can't wait until we all go to dinner.
After talking about turds.
And so
I didn't fall for your soundbite trap there.
I was
she
really,
did.
Yes. I was really, really hoping.
Although you probably got a clip of my face.
Just your reaction.
Oh my goodness. Sorry.
No, I I have seen that a lot of times too, where I've tried and tried and tried, and no matter what, the rock still just continually rolls down the hill.
Yeah.
And it's, it's fine. There are people born with 70 IQs in the world, and you simply, you have to show them how to wipe their own butt and pray for the best, and that's all you can do. So, oh well. You have to distance yourself from it. It's like copywriting. It's not you.
I'm not replying to any remarks.
I'm really trying to
I
elicit
know.
some sort of response from you.
Because I just know that becomes the promo clip for this whole interview.
Yeah, I'm not going to do something like that. But I would like to turn, and this can be where we sort of end today, back to that original question that I asked, about this beginners getting into copywriting, which is, what advice would you give to somebody who was just starting out, and they don't have to be interested in financial copywriting in general, but what advice would you want to give to somebody, like if you were talking to yourself years ago?
I am still gonna focus it on financial copywriting because I think that will focus the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to be prepared to make a lot of sacrifices. And I think, it's very easy from the outside to be drawn to the flashy promises of royalties and, writing $1 million promos. But are you prepared to, work a different job for a period of time to support your copywriting study if you're not making any money from copywriting yet? Are you prepared to juggle that? Are you prepared to spend a lot of time studying a very complex piece of copy that is a financial promo? Because those things, when you watch the actual thing, it can range from an hour to an hour and a half long. So, and then, to take that time to break down and analyze it, because for me, that was the fastest way to learn. That's a huge time commitment every day. And then when you're ready to show your work to the world, are you prepared to face a shit ton of rejection? And, just people like, who the fuck are you? Why are you in my inbox, Because all that was real for me for several months. Even, it took a while before the Banyan Hill thing happened. Joshua didn't guarantee me any work. He just said, I'm going to talk you up to as many different departments as possible. So in between, I was still prospecting, cold emailing, trying to think of how to set myself apart from what I knew were lots of other cold emailers out there, So, and are you prepared to wade through all of that self-doubt? For me, and I mean, I could pose this question to a beginner, are you also prepared to invest some money in getting help to do things that are just might be impossible on your own? For me, none of this would be possible without community. For me, that's a very important part of copywriting. I think, I've been lucky to be part of really fantastic communities. And like I said, I almost gave up when, the layoffs started happening across the financial publishing industry, when the markets, took a turn for the worst last year. I was ready to throw in the towel, and I was completely taken aback by the advice to no, this is when you put yourself out there. I couldn't have thought of that on my own. I'm not that brilliant or brave and smart. I just wouldn't have thought that long term. I thought that was it for me. What else should you be prepared to do? You would be prepared to take some detours, other opportunities might show up, and it might not be directly related to financial copywriting. You might have no idea what you're getting yourself into, but that experience can open doors for you. What else? And getting your foot in the door is just the beginning. I mean, like when you're in there, you gotta pitch ideas to your seniors, to your copy chief. Are you prepared to face even more rejection when your ideas don't make the mark, or when you submit copy for a review that it's not up to par yet? Yeah. So, and for me, that's there's a lot of sacrifice. Yeah. And not knowing if it's going to pan out. Yeah. And I think for a beginner, for them to know if, like, the best way for them to know if, like, financial copies for them is to, like, just watch your first financial promo and ask yourself if you can see yourself committing to this very complex, like, creative endeavor. Because, it's not just writing the copy. There's deciding the graphics, deciding what goes in the video, having to visualize all of that, learning to work with people from different departments, learning how to write compliant copy. There are so many moving parts to financial copywriting. Don't get seduced just by what you see on the surface, that it's the best way to get rich in copywriting, because I'm definitely not there yet. And you need to have something a lot more that motivates you. And I wouldn't read a copywriting book. I think I would recommend, like, Mastery by Robert Greene, because I think that put me in the best frame of mind to start, like, the 3 months of training with Stansberry, because it was all about doing things for the sake of getting better at doing them, and not getting wrapped up in, like, emotional conflicts and, like, politics and, like, anything on the side. Just, like, focus on what's going to help you get better at the writing and putting words to paper every day. Yeah.
I think that's exceptionally good advice.
Thank you.
I will speak from experience when I say that, financial copywriting, there's only 250, 300 people actually getting paid to do that, like on salary getting paid to do that in the world. There are not very many direct response, long form financial copywriters, because most of them just can't hang. They can't, like, even just to get your foot in the door, you have to be so far above so many other people. And that only gets you into the bottom rung of the people that are working in this space. And so for a lot of people, that can be very disheartening, because, they got into copywriting. The first thing that they asked was, what is the best niche? And somebody said, oh, well, financial pays the most. And that was what motivated on this journey. And that's not going to get you the job. It's not going to gain you any success. All it's going to do is result in what Daniel was saying earlier, which is 5 years from now, you're just going to quit and pick up graphic design. And so what I want everybody to take away from this meandering conversation that we've all had today is that it is hard. There is difficulty there. But if you're committed to it and also a little lucky, you might be able to succeed. I fucked up the sound bite. That was going to be the outro to the whole thing. And I was doing so well. I completely flubbed it. God damn.
We'll do it live.
We're just going to leave it at that. But I do have one last question for Daniel.
Oh,
and this actually comes from one of my...
Not about beginners getting into copywriting, is it?
No, it is not.
Good.
No, I promise. But I will want to ask you about lighting and the brightness levels of this a little bit later, if that's okay.
Cool, Wyatt.
Here's a question that came from one of the readers of Copy That, or viewers of Copy That. What is Daniel's hair care routine?
The new one or the old one?
Please elaborate on both.
Oh, gosh.
You had to ask.
Well, I don't know if you see now that my hair is actually curly, whereas, in every photo I have online, it's, the combed straight. It was actually a recent thing because it's naturally like this. Before, literally all I do is after I shower, I would just brush it over and it would it would stay like that. I just leave it, slightly dry it, brush it over, and it would stay like that. Chris Haddad called it my perfect Lego man hair.
I love that. All right.
Yeah. Now I found some hair products which were actually for curly hair, and I was like, yeah, I miss having curly hair. I'm going to try those. So it's a special kind. I think it's argan oil. I put it on my hair after I've showered, and then there's a curl cream which I apply after that. So that's the new hair care routine. I never thought I'd be asked that question.
I never thought I'd be reading it on something that was going to be seen by other humans.
Oh my!
But that's the kind of value that copy that.
Oh yeah, I know.
Well, Tania, Daniel, and Stephen, thank you very much for sitting with me for these last few hours and talking to me and sharing your experiences, and also being vulnerable with me, because I know that that's difficult in a setting like this. And it's also difficult when, both of you are trying your best to accomplish something in this life. And it's hard to look back on those moments where you felt that you weren't enough or not confident enough or not competent enough. And so I want to thank you on behalf of everybody watching this and listening to this, that you were willing to open up to them. So thank you.
It's been fun.
Mm-hmm.
There were certainly parts for you that did not seem fun at all. But I appreciate it nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm about to fall asleep.
Fair enough. Would you like to go drink?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Fair enough. Well, that was it. Thank you very much.